Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Between Two Consultants. My name is Nicholas Kelly,
And I'm Ethan Silvers.
and on this episode, we're going to be talking about remote workforce security. And we're fortunate to have Nick Callahan with us today to talk about that. Nick, could I ask for a very brief introduction, please?
10 seconds.
Go.
Nick Callahan, I support IT infrastructure at Logic 2020, enabling all of our consultants to be productive and also manage a managed service offering that Logic 2020 provides.
Awesome. Nick, some people say you have a quick wit. Is that true or false?
Medium quick.
Okay, pretty good. What is remote workforce security in a nutshell?
In simple terms, what we're going to talk about today, as far as remote workforce security, is the securing of endpoints. And I think, was it Ethan or Nick that were going to explain what an endpoint was?
Yeah, no, I will explain it very, very succinctly. But, just because you're our guest, why don't we go with you?
Okay, I'll proceed. Endpoints in this sense are, laptops, desktops, phones, the devices that employees are using to accomplish their work. And so we're going to talk about some of the changes that have occurred in that space in maintaining security around the content that's thereon.
Okay. Nick, I'm looking forward. Nick Callahan, sorry, I need to delineate between both of you. Also, it's probably for you guys like looking in a mirror. Nick Callahan, you did mention that you have quick wit. Can't wait for you to start showing us that. In terms of remote workforce security, and we're in a new world over the last year. Don't know if you've heard COVID-19 has been around. What changes have you been seeing pop up?
It's a great question, Ethan.
Thank you.
You're welcome. There has been a lot of reliance historically, particularly in the Microsoft ecosystem, on kind of an assumption that users were coming into physical offices and plugging their device into secured networks and getting updates and configuration changes, etc. And with COVID, that's just hasn't been a possibility for those folks that can still work remotely, including call centers, operations staff, etc. So, I mean, that's been one of the biggest changes.
Got it. And I'll throw in this other question. If other things pop to your mind about like big changes that you've seen from where we were before to now, we'll get back to that. But what challenges are you seeing from a security and IT operations perspective now that folks are working much more remotely?
So that tooling that was doing all the management of that, of those updates and security pushes and monitoring, depended on folks coming into the physical office, and they're not doing that anymore. So we've seen instances of security updates not being pushed, and inability to deploy new software, the inability to change configurations on machines. So it's made the logistics of both the ongoing support and, frankly, the onboarding of staff. That could probably be a whole nother episode. Equally fascinating. If there's anybody that's still awake that's watching this,
yeah, well,
in the future, I'm sure.
I just woke up. Are we recording?
Super. But that infrastructure and system center is one of the primary tools in that space. Very mature, very powerful. No longer viable if you've got staff that comes into the office once a year. And so Microsoft has had Intune and Autopilot, some parallel technologies in place for 5-6 years now. A lot of large enterprises, it was a significant effort to move to that new infrastructure. And COVID has really forced them in that direction. Now, there's plenty of other tools that can be used, whether it's supporting Microsoft endpoints or Mac devices or Android phones, etc. All these are potentially in a person's ecosystem and have to be considered.
Nice. We got a few more things that we want to cover. Nick, was there anything you wanted? Nick Kelly, excuse me. Yeah, I don't want there to be
If
confusion.
it helps, you can refer to me as the Nick, and
what should I refer to Nick
I
Kelly
don't care
as?
about the other.
I can be the over Nick.
The over Nick.
Hmm.
Other things you'd like to go off of from what the Nick just said.
Nick, would you say an endpoint is any device with a MAC address, or is there any other way you would define an endpoint?
That's pretty broad, because a MAC address could be on a router or firewall, or any device on a network, TCP/IP type device. But
not a great question, but keep going, Nick.
I thought
Good.
you said don't get too technical in our briefing. But primarily what we're talking about here are the tools that we're handing to our folks that are doing work in any given organization, right? And so they're going to be laptops, desktops, phones, tablets, those types of devices. Are the probably the 80%. And yes, there's other hardware devices out there that need to be equally considered, but that's probably the sweet spot where the
Nice
most
one.
pain has been felt.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Nick. And is the desire for, say, managing the ecosystem there? People have gone more remote. Are you seeing a trend of people bringing in more of their own technology? For example, cameras, other devices that help with the remote experience that maybe haven't been traditionally governed or managed?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, given the how kind of quickly COVID happened, and organizations not being really positioned for a 90 to 100% of their workforce working remotely, um, provisioning all the tooling that folks need to be most productive in the field was a challenge for a lot of organizations. Um, Things like cameras and speakers and microphones don't present really that physical device attached to an endpoint doesn't really represent a new exposure per se. Um, but it is something that probably should be considered as far as a policy of hardware management. You definitely, an individual's going, I'm going to use my personal device because it has a better camera or whatnot, is a consideration. I haven't seen a lot of examples of that occurring, but that certainly is a risk.
Thanks, Nick. Ethan, I'll send it back over to you for some low value, low quality questions.
Well, that's where I'm best situated. So thank you for that transition. But like just the last thing about the Nick, when you say like people bringing in their own devices, the over Nick Kelly, you have this incredible setup with all of this amazing technology. Did you get that pre-approved by the Nick Callahan?
It was more in spite of the under Nick that I went ahead and decided to innovate. So we can just leave it there.
I didn't hear anything.
All right, maybe we'll take that offline. Nick Callahan, what types of technologies are you using? Are you seeing in the market now that remote workforce security is becoming more of a thing?
The tooling to support remote endpoints has been around for a while. I mentioned Intune as one example, Jamf is another. There's quite a few mature products in that space. It's been a little less about net new tools being introduced where there's a gap, and more about prompting action where there hasn't been a compelling need because the old tools continue to work. So I think that's the bigger shift, Ethan, right now. Maybe what might be characterized as I don't want to say pent up demand, but where there wasn't a compelling business case to enable 100% remote work because 90% of your folks were coming into an office one or more times a week. Now they may not be coming into an office in a given month.
And you mentioned that a lot of the tools, services, um, have they have been mature. Have you seen any advancements that you weren't expecting, or is it, hey, they were already pretty good, it was already pretty mature, so there wasn't that much room to grow?
I think there's always room to grow, and that's an evolving space. The support of heterogeneous I should stop using the devices that you're managing has been one of the bigger challenges of effectively, to be frank, managing your Apple devices alongside your Microsoft devices, alongside your Android devices, alongside your iOS devices. And so there's been some evolution in that space in the last year. More robustness as that is increasingly a part of a lot of organizations' ecosystems. They have multiple different types of devices in the environment.
Nick Kelly, Callahan just said there's always room to grow. I think in terms of between two consultants, we sort of like have pretty much nailed it. Like, so I might take exception to that. I don't know, Kelly, if you have any thoughts.
It makes sense, but you know what? You always have to push the ceiling higher for other people. So I think that's what's going on here, and it's hard being at the top.
Just prompt me
Say
to
that.
wonder what this looked like in the early days then. But we can
Sorry, are
push
we?
on.
Sorry, I wasn't sure we were laughing at that or not.
Nick Callahan, in terms of the tools, technology, services that you have brought up, or even ones that you haven't, when somebody is thinking of, okay, these are the things that I should or should not be leveraging, what goes into that decision-making process?
I think one of the biggest gaps I've seen over the last year is that organizations don't have a good read on what level of configuration they currently have in place of devices, so they don't know what their current requirements are. Because those requirements have been implemented over a period of time, there's not a crisp view of what, as I move to new tooling or implement tooling, what is it I need to support as far as how I was managing the devices in the old environment versus the new environment and moving to the new tooling. So if before I didn't allow users to do X, Y, Z, and they receive patches on 1, 2, 3 update cadence, I need to be able to support that in the new environment, and does the new tooling support that, and does it do that across all the platforms that I need to do that? So really making sure that you're starting with a clear understanding of what it is you're doing today, what of that is really necessary versus has occurred organically, and what is the priority of those features or those nuances of the way you're managing things that are necessary to support in the future as you evaluate true remote security tooling solutions.
That was a not surprisingly lovely episode of Between Two Consultants. My name's Ethan Silvers.
I'm Nicholas Kelly.
Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.